Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reason We Learn Dissident Dispatch. I'm your host, Deb Philman. So glad you guys are here. I'm going to try to do this show a little quicker tonight because I understand some of you want to go watch a hockey game. That's the word on the street. And I hear the puck drops at about 8:15, so I'm going to try to speed it up here. So if you are new to this channel and you are interested in learning more about our education crisis and what a wide variety of people are trying to do about it, um, I hope you will subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel, so you can be notified when I make more content. And I also have a community at wokescreen.com/. The Reason We Learn. It's a private members only community where you can interact with me and other members more privately to talk about any issues you're having with education with your own kids. And also, it supports the work that I do here, which you can also do with super chats this evening. So if you have comments that you would like me to address up there on the screen and you're not already a member of my community, because I see that one of you is already here, super chats were greatly appreciated. And I will try to, well, not try, I will get to your comments for sure. So why are we here? Why are we here? And welcome to those watching on the replay, by the way. I know not everybody can watch live. Today, I'm going to give you an update on where we are with gender ideology. If you're new to the channel, I would direct you to my various playlists so you can find, there's a parents must watch list. There's something specific to gender issues. And you can learn about various facets of it from a wide variety of speakers and guests I've interviewed. But tonight, what I want to do is catch you up on a couple things. I'm going to catch you up on where we are with Title IX, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. If you're like, what? What's happening with Title IX? I'll give you a quick synopsis of that. I'm also going to bring you up to date on, where the Department of Education stands on these issues. Are they backing down at all? Are they, rolling it back since the Cass report and WPATH files and everything, or not so much? And we're going to talk briefly about a very brave doctor who's a whistleblower and spoke up against what was going on in his hospital and is now under investigation by the federal government, which is completely insane. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And finally, I want to take you through some work done by some of the researchers I follow on Twitter. I'm going to call it Twitter. I hope you guys realize that every time you come here and you hear me say Twitter, that's because I'm going to dead name it forever and always. And so we're talking about Colin Wright, J.D. Haltigan, and I think I also have some links, some things to show you from a couple other people, just to highlight what's going on. Now, very quickly, what do I mean by gender ideology? Because some of you might be tuning in and wondering, what is she talking about? What does she mean, like gender ideology? The idea that we have a gender identity is not a fact. It is not, provable in any sort of objective way. It's a theory, and it is primarily based on belief, the beliefs of the people who think they have them, the beliefs of the theorists who have written down what this theory is. And the gender theorists try to explain what we used to just call natural variations in, expression of your sex, your femininity, your masculinity, how you like to dress, what kind of toys you like to play with as a child, how you carry yourself. There's a sort of a wide variety of personalities when it comes to how people express being male or female. But that people who try to explain that as having a gendered identity, almost like a gendered soul that kind of floats around and gets stuck in the wrong body. So it's got a physical body that doesn't match what its soul was meant to be, or it has a male brain stuck in a female body, or a female brain stuck in a male body, whatever. That's essentially gender ideology, which is different from gender dysphoria. And I say that because there are people out there who are what we would call trans. We used to call transsexual. Some people may have called them at once upon a time transvestites, or people who are, cross dressers, or different things. And these are people who have such a strong discomfort in their own skin, in the body that they have, and it's a dysphoria. They're very uncomfortable with it, so they would prefer to be perceived or live out their lives being perceived as the opposite sex. But it's not been like, oh, there are 70,000 different genders, and like it's there's all these neo gender. No, it was, I was born male, but I'd really rather be received by the world as a female. I was born female, I'd rather be received, in the world as a male. But they weren't under any illusions that they were actually female or actually male trapped in this body. It was more like, this is what I would feel more comfortable being in the world. Okay. And so to that extent, then this has been going for quite a while, people would take steps to transition. That is fundamentally different than gender ideology. I just want to make that very, very clear. And I get a lot of flack for that from gender critical people, because a lot of people want to say, nope, it's all the same thing. Well, your mileage may vary. I am not there with you on that. I think there are people who have been existing on this planet, preferring to go about their lives, unassuming, not trying to get into different bathrooms, not trying to be perceived as literally male or literally female. They know what they are biologically, genetically, et cetera. They just would rather walk through the world a different way. They're not trying to impose on anybody. Okay, so gender ideology isn't that. Gender ideology, to a large degree, is aligned with queer theory, which is sort of like, let's break everything that was and replace it with something, not that. Ditto what? Just not that. That would be queering. So gender ideology in its most basic terms, or basic form in our schools, is the idea that our children who we send to school are not our son or our daughter. They're whatever they feel like. Gosh. And it's up to them to decide, even from the age of 6. Completely up to them. They can, they were assigned their sex. So therefore, for certain, their gender, could be something totally different. You assign their sex, my goodness. What makes you think they would have a gender identity that matched this thing that you assigned them? So it's this whole idea that we don't have a sex binary, first of all, and that we have a separate thing, separate and apart from this sex that we would identify called a gender. And in come the pronouns and all these other things. And for a long time, parents said, I'm afraid they're going to try to push this on my kids. And parents were told, you're nuts. Why would anyone do that? That's not happening. That's not happening anywhere. You're crazy. You're paranoid. It's not happening. We're just teaching your children how to be accepting and inclusive of people who are different. We're just teaching your children how to be very, to make everyone feel welcome. There are children who are trans, we were told, and they know it from, birth. From birth, they know. And therefore, we have to create this environment that is so welcoming. And in order to do that, we can't possibly let your child just be. We have to present the idea to them that anyone could be not really what they were told by their parents. Okay. And in comes gender ideology. And we'll say, yeah, you're doing it. Look, you're doing it. You have a gender corn. You're saying that, there's a sexuality, a gender identity, and a sex. And then they all may be totally different. They don't necessarily match. They don't go together. It's like whatever the kid wants. And it can change tomorrow and the next day. And it could change at puberty. And then it could change back again. And, whatever. And we say, you're doing it. And they say, no, we're not. Yes, you are. No, you're not. And so on. Well, we're past that. We're way past, are you doing it? Are you not doing it? And we're at the stage of course we're doing it. And what kind of weirdo would you be to not want us to do it? And now we've arrived at but how are they doing it? Because now what they're saying is, well, of course we're doing it, but the only kids who are going to be, who are going to receive this information and actually be trans or have, or say that they are come out as a different gender or say that they have a gender identity that doesn't match their natal sex or whatever, are those who already were. We're not changing them. What are you talking about? We're not manipulating them. Are you crazy? That would You're nuts. We're not doing that. So remember, we went from we're not doing any of this to now I was like, we never said that. What? What? We never said that. Of course we're presenting them with this information. You're just stuck in a, old fashioned ways and you want your kids to be bigots, but we're not changing what they already are. They just are this. And so I get questions from people like, okay, you say they're doing it. I'm willing to believe I see the rainbow flags. I see the trans flag. I see all this stuff, but they're trying to actually change the kids, like queering, trying to trans them. Don't you think that's a bit much? Don't you really? Isn't this what you guys said back when, we were fighting for gay rights and a lot of conservatives said they're going to turn the kids gay. They're going to come for the kids. And people made fun of conservatives and said, you're either gay or you're not. We'll have a chat with some of the trans activists because they'll be the first ones to tell you that's not true anymore. And of course, that's news to a lot of, lesbians and gay men. They're like, wait, what? I'm sorry, what? What do you mean? I'm actually not really a lesbian or I'm not really gay or I am, but I'm a bigot if I don't want to sleep with somebody who's trans and so on. So what they used to tell us about, no, you're just born this way. Now it's like, you're a bigot if you don't want to sleep with someone who was born straight. Essentially, if you're born male, you want to transition to be female, to appear, you're not going to be female, to appear female, and then call yourself a lesbian. Okay? And you tell the lesbian that she's wrong for not wanting to date you or sleep with you and for not being attracted to you because she's not straight. She doesn't want to be with somebody who's actually really a man. Then you're saying that somebody should be able to change from being homosexual to heterosexual. That's effectively what they're saying, but it only works one way, right? So it can be very confusing for parents because they're trying to listen to all this and trying to make sense of it, trying to figure out how at risk their own kids are. And they're being told that people like me and others who are saying, no, they're really actually trying to queer your children and to get as many children as possible to question their gender identity and to have one that does not align with their natal sex. And they think that we're crazy. So along come the researchers to try to find evidence. And guess what? It's out there. It's out there. What's funny is most of the people producing this information don't really try very hard to hide it. They just lie about it when you ask. So they're not hiding it, but they assume you're never going to find it. They're going to put you off, make you feel like you're stupid, make you feel like you're a bigot, and you're going to just, go away or be discredited, which is just as good. And so people like Colin Wright, who I follow, are very important to this entire conversation because they're, rooting around on the internet, finding important things for us to look at that explain how they do it. So let's start there. I'll get to the Title IX stuff, the newsy stuff later, but I want to make sure you guys see this. All right, so let's share a screen. Here we go. So this is what Colin found. And let me show you where I found this. Okay. So this is where I was today. And I saw, he says, they are literally. Oh, that's interesting. I hope I don't need to play a video because it says it's lost connection to my audio for the screen share. Anyway, this is literally, what I was following. Okay. He says they are literally testing how to most effectively indoctrinate young children into the gender cult. And we call it a cult because it has all the features of a cult. To learn more about that, I don't have time in 3 shows to explain it to you. I strongly recommend that you get Logan Lansing and James Lindsay's book, Queering the American Child. It's a quick, easy read. It's accessible to the average person, and it's irrefutable. I mean, you read it and you see all the evidence, and you're like, yeah, okay, so that is what's happening. And it operates like a cult. Don't be surprised if we see these tactics implemented in public schools. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. It's probably already happening somewhere. We just have yet to find the evidence of that. So, what he showed, let me go back to it, was this. This is the British Psychological Society, British Journal of Developmental Psychology, Transformative Tales, the role of story videos on children's reasoning about transgender identities. Let's take a look at the abstract. The current study explored whether positive contact through stories could influence how young children think about transgender identities and gender in general. A total of 174 children ages 5 to 6, or 5 and 6, it's hard to tell, and 9 to 10 were randomly assigned to one of 3 conditions. Jazz, participants watched a video regarding a transgender child named Jazz. I bet they didn't hear about the negative side effects that Jazz Jennings suffered. But anyway, blue, participants watched a video regarding a marker that looked red on the outside, but inside was really blue, and a control, no video. Both videos describe the main character as feeling different inside than outside, and their social transition to the preferred identity. Researcher scaffolding supported the video messages. Researcher scaffolding supported the video messages. Children who viewed the Jazz video had A, greater understanding of transgender identities, and B, no overall differences in gender essentialism, but C, lower gender essentialism on 3 specific measures: gender immutability, innate toy behaviors, and innate preferences. So they're telling you in the abstract that after they got done with this experiment, those who'd watched the Jazz video had lower gender essentialism in terms of gender immutability. So these kids now had a lower degree of belief in the idea that you don't or can't change your gender. And after a point, we have to say, what's the difference? Is it a distinction without a difference to say, oh, gender is different than sex? They're little kids. Do you think they understand these subtleties and nuances? I don't, but that's me. Also, gender essentialism was lower in older versus younger children. In this study, a direct, realistic story was the only effective means of teaching children about transgender identities and reducing belief in gender immutability. They're telling you they are looking for ways to reduce the belief in the unchanging gender. There it is in black and white. This worked. We experimented on children, and guess what? We got them to have less of a firm belief that gender is immutable. Go us. Okay. Key points. Studied understanding of transgender and gender essentialism in children. Hearing story about transgender child increases children's understanding of transgender identities. Well, my goodness, if you tell a kid a story about anything, it's going to increase their understanding of that thing. Oh, I never heard of that before. Okay. Does understanding make it true? I bet if you read them a story about aliens, they'd have a greater understanding about aliens. Are aliens real? Can we prove that they're real? I mean, it's what you tell this age group about a thing. Here's a story about this person who maintains they are this, and we back that up. We're going to scaffold. Yep, it's true. Yep. Okay, they understand it. Do you really expect a 5 to 6-year-old, a 9 to 10-year-old to go, this is BS? This can't be. No, why would they? Why would they challenge it? You read me a story. You tell me this is true. Why would I not believe you? I mean, at this age, they believe in Santa Claus, the tooth fairy. They believe in a lot of things, or they understand better about these things, and to a greater degree think they're real. I tell the story all the time. I have one of my 3 daughters was very into dragons at around the age of 9 and 10. Hugely into dragons. knew everything about understood dragons very, very well. One day said, Mom, I am a dragon. I mean, not on the outside. This is a true story. Not on the outside, but I truly believe that I am descended from dragons and that inside I'm related to dragons. Now, I saw it for what it was. This is the wishful thing, like she was reading all these dragon novels and fantasies and stuff and loved it. And I was like, uh-huh, you're a human. No, you don't understand, Mom. I think like a dragon. Okay, well, how do you know how a dragon thinks if you've never been a dragon? I mean, we had these conversations, but I didn't go hardcore against it because I knew on some level she knew she was a dragon. Okay. So had she said, I would like to go get, horns installed and all kinds of things, I'd be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay. Let's have a chat. But she understood dragons very, very well. So what? So what? If somebody had a goal of, and the child now has a belief in species, it has less of a firm belief in species immutability. Isn't that awesome? And now somebody's going to say, species and gender is very different things. Really? Is it? Can you snap your fingers and produce a different kind of gamete? No, you can't. Well, that's what separates a male and a female. Okay. So you can do all kinds of cosmetic things to yourself. You're still going to be what you are. And getting our kids to think that that's not true, that you can actually literally change is what we're talking about here. Okay. And then it says gender essentialism was slightly reduced after hearing the trend of a short, but they're actively trying to do this. And then going back to Colin's research, let me go find where he had also found pictures. He'd found some pictures of what they did. Yes, here we go. All right. This is what he found. Excerpts from the scripts for the story videos with accompanying screenshots of the video images. This just brings it home, I hope, for you. Okay. Jazz story script and marker story script. These are scripts. I am Jazz. For as long as I can remember, my favorite color has been pink. My second favorite color is silver, and my third favorite color is green. I have a girl brain, but a boy body. I was born this way. There is no such thing as a girl brain and a boy brain. There's no such thing. Sorry to say. Even if we could effectively isolate the exact quantities of certain pituitary hormones and other kinds of hormones that are, secreted at puberty that, make you a little more feminine, a little more masculine, or this or that or the other. It doesn't change you literally from a boy to a girl. Your brain is your brain. You are your body. And that includes your brain. That includes your brain. And then there'll always be somebody going, no, we've studied the brain and some male brains and female brains have certain this and that connections, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Certain kinds of correlations do not prove the existence of a uniquely female brain and male brain. That they do not do. So this is a lie. And they put it in front of kids. Okay. I was born this way. So we're born this way. But then we're trying to change their notions of immutability. Okay. When I was very little and my mom would say, you're such a good boy, I would say, no, mama, good girl. At first, my family was confused. They'd always thought of me as a boy. I was so happy when the teachers changed their minds. Did you hear that? I was so happy when the teachers changed their minds. So now we've implanted the idea with the kids sitting in this experiment are hearing a story, a script about how teachers helped a child by changing their parents' minds about something truly fundamental about the kid. I was so happy when the teachers changed their minds. Not a doctor, not a therapist, not a medical scientist, not, teachers. Teachers change the parents' minds. Because that's a thing, apparently. That's perfectly fine. I can't imagine not playing on the same team as Casey and Samantha. Well, we all have friends we like to hang out with, and sometimes they're of the opposite sex. And sometimes we want to play on their team. I played in an all boys soccer team when I was a kid. Didn't make me a boy. I loved soccer. I loved sports. I especially loved baseball. Couldn't play hardball baseball. Didn't have that for girls. They still don't. They have softball. They didn't even have softball when I was a kid. So I threw a ball with my neighbors who were boys every chance I got. I went out and hit a ball with my dad every chance I got. Hardball baseball, not wiffle ball, not softball. No, hardball. I loved baseball. Reggie Jackson was my hero. And I never doubted that I was a girl because there was no reason why a girl couldn't like baseball. But what's the message that they are teaching these 5 and 6-year-olds and 9 and 10-year-olds? That in order to play with the friends, you have to actually be a girl, that wanting to play with female friends equals girl. That loving the color pink equals girl. Is this not regressive stereotyping? But this is the message. Well, I want to, but wait, my best friends are boys and I want to play on the soccer team with them. I guess that means I'm a boy. And well, is this going to work on every kid? Is every kid going to have this? No, of course not. But they just told us that these things, the kids who saw the jazz video and heard the jazz script came away with a lower degree of, belief in the immutability. So they were still changed. These children were still fundamentally altered in their belief system from the before state. Let's see. Even today, there are kids who tease me or call me a boy name or ignore me altogether. This makes me feel crummy. Then I remember that the kids who get to know me usually want to be my friend. They say I'm one of the nicest girls in school. Okay, that's that script. Now we have the marker. I am blue. For as long as I can remember, my thing to draw is a blue whale. Who wrote this crap? My second favorite thing to draw is blue jeans. And my third favorite thing to draw is suede shoes. We do understand that a marker doesn't talk, right? I mean, this is what's so baffling to me. We're presenting a story about a marker. We're personifying and anthropomorphizing a marker. But children know best. They know it's real and fantasy, but it's a marker that talks and has preferences. Okie dokie. Let's continue. I have a blue inside and a red outside. I was made this way. What? When I was very little, my mom would say, "You're such a good red marker." And I would say, "No, mama, good blue marker." And I don't even want to continue this. Yes. Red and blue, blue and pink, whatever. They're still doing this, blue equals boy, pink and red equals girl. And if you're confused about that, you're trapped in the wrong body. There couldn't possibly be boys who like pink and girls who like blue. That doesn't happen. And then guess what? There are boys who like neither and girls who like neither. That happens as well. My favorite color growing up was green. What did that mean? I don't know. Nothing. So I definitely hated pink though. Hated it. Like passionately hated the color pink. Didn't want to wear it. I hated all things girly. I was a tomboy. I wanted to be like the boys. All the kids on my block except for one were boys. So when we'd go outside to run around and play and ride bikes, they were boys, the kids in my neighborhood. So if I wanted to play, I was going to probably have to play with boys and do boy things. And that was fine with me. You'll notice I still have kind of boyish energy, I'm told I'm very abrasive and aggressive and that's a boy thing. Anyway, so there, this just, what they did was they took the jazz story, they put it into a marker. And then they said, which works better? using a human or marker? I don't know. What do you think? What would work better? Probably the human when your goal is getting them to believe that something is not immutable. They can actually like hold a marker. Okay, here I have a red marker. And if I take, and I have a blue marker. Now, if I take the blue cap and I put it on the red marker, it's not suddenly a blue marker. And any kid, even a 5-year-old, can see that. They get that. I can test that myself. It gets a little dicier when we're talking about humans, though, doesn't it? Especially if we're reinforcing within the story that the things that make someone a girl are, what they like to do, what colors they like, and so on and so forth. They understand human preferences, they have them. And if you tell them that that is what makes you one thing or the other, they believe you. Why wouldn't they believe you? And because the vast majority of them will align with that. That's what people miss. People think, well, this can't work. You're not going to get a whole bunch of kids that suddenly go, oh my God, my boy. Oh my God. That's not the point. You don't understand. The point isn't to get all the kids to turn. Is to get a certain percentage, as many as are malleable and easily manipulated and confused and so forth. Sure, bonus, great. The point is to change their belief system about what is real and what is not real and how something is real, how we know what we know, how we know what is true and how we know what is not true, how we separate belief from fact. That's the real goal. That's why I said all of these children came out changed, even if they were still like, well, I'm still a boy, I'm still a girl. And you know why? Because there is a kernel of truth to stereotypes too. So there are plenty of boys who would hear the story and be like, yeah, I'm good. I don't want to wear a dress. I don't like pink. And I'm really not interested in playing the girls' team. That's probably going to be the majority of them. But so they're going to believe it's going to be actually easier for them to believe that a boy, they're very egocentric kids. So a boy who likes pink, yeah, of course he's a girl. I mean, that makes sense, right? It's going to make sense to them precisely because it doesn't describe them. So you see, we don't ever talk about that side of it. We only talk about oh my God, they're going to magically become no, they're not going to magically become trans. What's going to happen is those children with a more fragile sense of self to begin with, and more fragile ego, possibly, those are on the spectrum, those have ADHD, those who have trouble at home. Maybe it's very common for young children, especially young boys, because they spend more time with their mother and female teachers, to identify more or want to gravitate more towards that person. If they're very sensitive, and there are sensitive people out there, sort of gravitate towards their caregiver and wanting to be like their caregiver. They identify more with that person. They may just be feminine, okay? May grow up to be what we used to call a femboy, a very feminine boy who would probably be gay. Okay. And there is a body of evidence that homosexuality is, to a certain degree, a little more nature than nurture. So maybe that's what they are. But they're going to convince them like, oh no, they're a girl. And now the kids can believe that. And now when a boy tells a group of kids, I'm really a girl, the kids will not only believe it, but be likely to defend the concept to the adults, to their parents, to everybody else, and any other thing you want to attach to that, a policy, a law, whatever, they'll go along with it because they understand it now. They have no reason to fight back against it. And now the door is open to convincing them all kinds of things aren't as they seem, aren't as they were told, especially by their family. Okay. And that's really the key thing. All right. So I'm going to reduce this. So Colin says, those are the excerpts. And then let me go. There was another thing he had to say about it. Let me see if I can find it. So there was the developmental psych. Gotta find it here. Sorry, I'm just like going through all of the stuff. There's so much. And it isn't all Colin. There are other people here who are saying other things about how they work on our kids in this way. Well, this was interesting too. He said, so much of modern research on gender and sexuality seems to simply rename well known phenomena and pretend like they've discovered something new. Sorry, bisexual people, you're plurisexual now. So they just took even bisexuality and renamed it. So they've been doing that too. We used to call tomboys or femboys. Oh, I wonder if we should pause here or come back to it. So, if the thrust of this video is to explain to you that they are trying to teach our kids, to sexualize our kids and teach our kids things that just our kids don't need to know. How do you feel about mom and dad's swing party? Look at this. Can you guys hear it? Every weekend. This is from a kid's point of view. Give balloons. It's a pained face, by the way. And this was necessary in the world. Why? I what I don't somebody's probably gonna come and say, "That's not meant for children. It was written for adults." Blah, 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 blah." I actually don't care. I really don't. Can we not normalize this also? What grown adults do in the privacy of their own home, that's their business. I don't need to know about it. But I think there's a value to some things not being so normalized that they find their way into what appears to be a children's book because somebody's going to go get that for a kid maybe by accident and it's not going to be good. Or it will wind up in a school or somewhere where kids can see it because it's obviously readily accessible to kids. So why would you do that? Why would you do that? And so some people are saying it was meant for kids. Okay. I believe it actually. So then getting back to what was going on with the videos and the Jazz Jennings stuff. Okay. So this is what let me get this open. This is what Colin is saying. The videos were stopped periodically. So those videos, the little scripts that we saw were stopped periodically to ask the children 3 questions. What is different about Jazz and Blue? Why is Jazz or Blue sad? Why is Jazz or Blue happy? Regardless of the child's response, the researchers responded with set answers. How did this get approved? How is this ethical? This is they responded with set answers. So these aren't just research subjects. They, they're being programmed while they're being studied. So why is Jazz or Blue sad? Sample explanations what the kids might have said because no one will let her be a girl. Every time they play in gym, she has to be on the boys team, but she's a girl because people say she's a boy and make fun of her. Sample, and then it says identity because these are their different answers. All right. And so that's, coding of open-ended responses with examples of actual responses selected to best represent the codes. So this is what they had there. And I mean, this is a sample explanation for Blue because everyone is him like treating him like a red person because he thinks that because he draws blue, he should be on blue, but he's made red. So they think he should be red. These sound like kid answers. But now look at these, what others do or think, because now her mom and dad call her a girl. So like, why are they happy? and friends like her because her teachers changed their minds, because her friends don't treat her like a boy, because she's being herself. So happiness, what do we learn about happiness here? So we learn that sadness is caused by other people and happiness is caused by other people. Isn't that amazing? Huh. That's where happiness and sadness come from, other people. Identity, because she's being herself, because everyone says she can be what she wants, because everyone understands, because other people respond. You see, this is the problem with gender ideology. It's one more thing. We had critical race theory. We've had all the intersectional stuff about oppressors and oppressed and so on. And what gender theory does is it gives them one more really potent way to drive the point home to every child, even the so-called cis ones, which I hate that word, by the way. There's no such thing. All right. Drives the point home that happiness and sadness are the result of how other people see you, how other people respond to you, and whether other people will go along with how you feel and how you want to be perceived. Not what is true, but how you want to be perceived. If they'll go along with you, then you can be happy. If they won't go along with you, you're going to be sad. I got news for you, little kids. People are not going to validate your beliefs about a lot of things. They're not going to agree with you about your political views. They're not going to agree with runs the gamut. Is it going to be an assault on your identity every single time? Well, yes, that's the point. That's what they want. They want these kids to be so unbelievably emotionally fragile that they are what? What? Oh, right. Malleable, easily manipulated, easily controlled. How do you control somebody who is desperate for external validation? Well, my goodness, you validate them, but you don't validate them all the time. You validate them intermittently, right? You see, you get that dopamine response, then a crash, and then they're dying for more, and then a crash again. And you just keep doing that. It's like pull them in, drop them, pull them in, drop them. And they're in a constant state of pick me. It's what narcissistic abusers do. It's what cults do. Oh my God, we love you. We love bomb you. You're amazing. We approve, we validate, we love you. And they don't. They don't really love you. Look, they won't accept you. They don't believe what you believe, blah, 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 blah. And then you ask any question, I don't know if this is really true. Fine. I guess you're not really one of us. I guess you just really, whatever, drop. No, really. Pull back. How could this be useful? Who might want to do this to a population of people? Whether they latch on to the I'm now a girl or I'm now a boy or not is, that could be a great moneymaker for somebody and, probably make somebody extra vulnerable. And bonus, they won't reproduce, most likely. So, there's a lot of bonuses for the other agendas that are going on. But by and large, what you end up with is a large population of people who truly believe that happiness and sadness come from outside of you. And furthermore, that they're your responsibility to deliver to other people, not yourself. You're supposed to be accepting and inclusive and make sure everybody feels like they belong. And if they don't, it's probably your fault. You probably weren't accepting enough. Actually, you're probably a bigot, which makes you really a bad person. You see how this works? So, this is one of the most obvious examples I've seen in a long time. Then he says, the researchers acknowledge that their findings were generally modest, but claim that a more powerful manipulation, that's in quotes, a more powerful manipulation, such as a longer story and repeated readings of the story, especially by someone familiar to the child, like their classroom teacher, may show stronger effects. Are you guys like weirded out by this, or am I the only one? And this is what they say in their little thing. To summarize the key results, the study revealed that stories can be a way to teach children about the social world and change essential beliefs. Did you know that was part of the project? It's always been, shouldn't be anything new to you, but I bet you didn't think they'd go this far. So when they tell you they're not doing it or you're crazy or whatever, they most definitely are doing it. It is the goal. At the same time, although overall the findings were generally modest, we believe they are nonetheless promising. They're promising. This is like, they didn't do this research to go, this is alarming. Children are very easily manipulated. Oh my goodness. All we did was read them a story. No, they're like, this is very promising. Oh, goody. um, Given that the manipulation, they call it manipulation, was only 3.5 minutes in length. I feel like I'm reading a report from Dr. Evil. I really do. I feel like it was only 3 minutes in length. I think we should probably do more. Have a longer story next time. I mean, this is what I feel like I'm reading. A more powerful manipulation may show stronger effects. Bring out the lasers. Potential ways of strengthening the manipulation could include, for example, and this is what he said, a longer story, etc. And then it says, have the story read by a familiar person rather than a stranger on video, more interactive discussions. Yes, more struggle sessions with a parent or other adult. I promise you, parents, well, some parents will do this and we'll take a look at some of a video. I don't know if you guys will be able to hear it. That's the only problem. The the video might not work. I might have to stop screen and see if it's going to work. But in any case, or studying older children who may be less rigid in their gender beliefs. Why would older children be less rigid? Why would older children be less rigid in their gender beliefs? And they cite a paper. I haven't read it. But I wonder if the older children are truly less rigid or if the older children are more rebellious against norms. I'd love to take a look at that paper. I'll have to go look it up at some point, not today. Then he says on here, the more exposure children have to people with varying diverse identities, the more expansive their understanding of gender may become. Expansive. That's the goal. Thus, potentially reducing gender essentialism. Who decided that was a goal? Did you guys have that as your goal for your children? That they be, less gender essential? Why is that a good goal? Why do we want that? Why should it be a goal for our children to be gender expansive themselves or to be totally fine with gender expansiveness in other people? What's going on here? You see, what started as these people are just born and they exist in our population and they feel inhibited and they can't just be themselves. And so we need to know that they exist and we need to understand their needs and their concerns so that we can, be polite and we can be accepting and understanding and not, be mean to them. Okay. We have gone so far from that, from acceptance, and actually it really started as tolerance. And my guest last week, Professor Allen, explained that tolerance is called tolerance because you are forbearing something you find unacceptable. In other words, you're not disallowed from finding it unacceptable. Society is not going, you're a bad person because you find it unacceptable. They're just asking you to not rain that all over everybody, right? So, for example, there are people who might say, well, you're a very devout Christian or Catholic or something, but you are tolerant of gay married couples. You might still find it unacceptable and disagree with it, whatever, but you're not going to go like, you're going to hell, whatever. Okay. That's what tolerance looks like. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to be polite. I'm going to treat you like I treat everybody else. That's what tolerance looks like. Acceptance is the next level. Acceptance is, no, I totally accept it as a viable alternative, even for my own kids. It's totally fine. It's on par and acceptable to me in my value set. It's acceptable. I accept it. Okay. And then we have we had a step before now called celebratory. So we had a thing where it's like, no, you're different. And that's a great thing. Let's celebrate you. Let's have a parade. We want you to feel so good about yourself. So we're going to celebrate you. Here's some swag. Here's a flag. Here's a pin. Here's a day devoted to you. Okay. Let's make it a week. And now we're at a month. And now we're way past celebratory. And now we are at transformative. We're at the transformative stage where forget those people who want to stay back in tolerance. Well, they're horrible. Like we need to socially ostracize them, cancel them, fire them. Like they're the worst kind of people ever. They're not allowed to just stay in tolerance level. That's hate. Tolerance is now hate. Acceptance, well, that's nice, but you really, you're not really okay with it because you're not validating me enough when I'm a total stranger. Like you're only okay with it when it's like your friends, your kid, whatever, but you're not like willing to have me come in the bathroom with you, lady, with my 5 o'clock shadow and whatever. You don't really accept me. And then the people celebrating, that's not quite good enough. It's better. It's nice of you to come to the drag show and bring your 3-year-old and let them stuff dollar bills in my G-string. You're celebrating me, but I'd like to have a private chat with your 3-year-old and read them a story and make sure they're more gender expansive. That's where we are now. So if you're still stuck back in like, oh my God, drag queen story hour, yeah, we're past that. They right now want to have a private chat with your 5-year-old. Maybe for longer than the 3.5 minutes of this video too. You're okay with that, right? And they want to talk to them about how the teachers changed the parents' minds. Wonder how that works. A few threats from family services and the counselor saying your child is going to unalive themselves if the parents don't change their minds. I'm sure there's no bullying whatsoever at all that goes on with that. No emotional blackmail. Of course not. Why would they do that? Except we know that that's happened. All right. So that was that. And then he says here, also this study is part of the first author's PhD dissertation. Yes, people are literally getting PhDs in how to indoctrinate your kids into gender ideology. University of Michigan. So next time somebody says, "Are you a PhD? Are you an expert?" Just remember, this is one of the ways that someone is getting a PhD in better manipulation of children. Yeah, it's disgusting. So that's what Colin found. And he also found there was one other thing that I want to show you that he found and put up today. Well, there was this, and I've been talking to our friend Adrian South Sophia about this paper. I'm not going into it today, but at some point in the near future, we hope to do a study says show on a Saturday for this one. There is not one shred of evidence that being trans is not a divine gift. Grace and lace letter and the rhetorical construction of an evangelical trans feminine identity. Alrighty then. Yeah, we'll try to talk about that one of these weekends. So then he found this other thing. I'm trying to find it, was where he identified it as what he called a catechism. Let me see if I can find it. See, I store so much stuff in here. Please forgive me all the scrolling. Here it is. All right. He says, so the videos we just showed you, the little video scripts, and from the paper we just talked about, he went and found this and explains how it is a gender cult catechism. Catechism, a manual of religious instruction usually arranged in the form of questions and answers used to instruct the young to win converts and to testify to the faith. You tell me how what they did is any different. How is it any different? Except the faith here is a kind of inverse. They want the kids to have faith in the mutability of gender and sex. Because it's funny, they don't separate the two. Once they convert the kid to believing they're mutable, changeable, then they transpose that on top of sex. They'll tell you, like, it's not the same as sex. Gender identity and sex are two different things. Until you are ready to believe in the gender side, and then they tell you, no, that is now your sex. That's what you are. Now they go back to there's no difference. And that's the belief they want them to have. Okay. So when we're going to transition into talking about Title IX, and I think it's a pretty good transition because the Department of Education has drawn a line in the sand that they absolutely positively are all in on this. Even now, even post CAS, post WPATH files, they are not backing down. If anything, they're restating what they believe. They're continuing to press these, to defend these lawsuits about Title IX. And so let's go to that. What is the Title IX situation? So Joe Biden's Department of Education tried to change or wants to change Title IX from what it was of like 2 lines, basically, to, there couldn't be discrimination on the basis of sex in schools or institutions receiving federal funds. So it has an impact in particular on sports, because if you have a school getting federal funds or state funds or, and federal funds, and they have all kinds of male teams, not enough female teams, not a sort of equal representation, they're not spending any money on female sports, and it's really heavily on the male sports, then it's deemed to be discriminatory. That's what they basically were saying. If they aren't paying attention to the gender sort of disparity in hiring and different things, well, then that's a potentially discriminatory. But it was mostly about sports. So, but now we have gender muddying the waters. Remember how funny it is that they're like, gender and sex are not the same thing until we get to this. Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 was signed into law more than 50 years ago. In the decades since, Title IX's protections have paved the way for tremendous strides in access to education and more for millions of students across the country, and have opened doors for generations of women and girls. That's what it was for. Women and girls. In spite of this historic progress, rates of sexual harassment and assault in our nation's schools and colleges remain unacceptably high. Many women see their education derailed because of pregnancy discrimination, and many LGBTQIA+ students face bullying and harassment just because of who they are. Actually, I would say it's more because of who they aren't. First of all, L and G and B weren't really having a problem, because lesbians know they're women. Gay men know they're men. They played on the appropriate teams. They went in the appropriate locker rooms. They, they weren't disputing what sex they were. If there was sex discrimination, it was on the basis of their sex, and nothing to do with them being gay or lesbian, or for that matter, bi. It's one of the reasons I hate that they lump all these letters together. T, Q, and I, that's a whole different thing. Now we're getting into something else, because that is supposed to be referring to identity, not reality. The Biden-Harris administration believes that the promise of Title IX and education free from sex discrimination remains as vital now as it was, blah, blah, blah. So they released their final rule to fully effectuate Title IX's promise that no person experiences sex discrimination in federally funded education. The final regulation will help to ensure that all persons, including students and employees, receive appropriate support if they experience sex discrimination, etc. But what they're talking about now is they are talking about gender. They somewhere down in here, they explicitly talk about gender identity. Let me see if I can find it. Sex-based harassment. Sorry, I should have found this before we came on here. But the main point is that they are including gender identity now in it. That if a natal male says, I'm a girl, they cannot be discriminated against on the basis of being male. if that makes any sense to you. So they're saying, I want to be in the girls' team and I want to go in the girls' locker room and I want to do the girls' stuff. And you can't say no on the basis of me being, you can't say no. You're discriminating against me if you tell me I have to be in the boys' team or the men's team, or if I have to use the men's bathroom. And they run the risk if the school says, we're not doing that, Joe Biden, you lose your money. You lose the funding. You're not in compliance with Title IX. You might even face fines. Depends how it works. So the good news is there has been pushback against this. And let me go see if I can find that. There has been, they've had setbacks. So Biden's Title IX law expanding protections for LGBTQ plus students has dealt another setback. This is June 17th. Biden administration's effort to expand protections for LGBTQ students has hit another roadblock. This is in Kentucky. Federal judge in Kentucky temporarily blocked the new Title IX rule in 6 additional states. So they're saying you can't do this. U.S. District Judge Danny C. Reeves referred to the regulation as arbitrary in the truest sense of the word and granting a preliminary injunction blocking it in Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. His ruling comes days after a different federal judge temporarily blocked the new rule from taking effect in Idaho, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Montana. Attorneys general in more than 20 Republican-led states have filed at least 7 legal challenges to President Joe Biden's new policy. Republicans argue the policy is a ruse to allow transgender girls to play on girls' athletic teams. The Biden administration said the rule does not apply to athletics. Of course, our question is, how does it not? How would it not? Like, I'm missing that. Still under consideration is a request for a preliminary injunction filed by the Republican attorneys general. There's more states set to take hold in August. The rule expands Title IX civil rights protections to LGBTQ students, expands the definition of sexual harassment at schools and colleges, and adds safeguards for victims. Title IX passes blah, 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 sex discrimination in education. So they're saying it doesn't apply to athletics. My question is, how does it not? When Title IX was deemed to be so important because it opened the door to more participation in sports for women, and they couldn't be discriminated against on the basis of being female. But let's look at the other issues with it. How are they going to decide on a college campus that someone is being discriminated against on the basis of sex when you cannot objectively identify what sex the person is? When it's something, could be a moving target. If it's identity and it's self-identified, I'm male today, or I'm male today, I'm female tomorrow, or I'm male this month, I'm female next month, I'm a third thing that it doesn't, that I just made up. I'm in between, I'm non-binary, I'm, whatever. How do you adjudicate that? How do you decide this was discrimination? And how many people are going to get punished on the basis of them not being able to tell, just like not knowing what the heck is going on because it's mass confusion? And if you don't have sex that is objective, we can all agree on it, like this is a male and this is a female, this is a boy, this is a girl, and it's always that way, then how do you even decide what sex discrimination is? It almost voids itself. Now, Logan Lansing writes about that in some detail in his book. I'm butchering the explanation, but it cancels itself out. You can't say there's such a thing as sex that we can identify as, you discriminated on the basis of it, but no, it's not. It's whatever somebody says. Slightly problematic. All right, so there's that. Then I wanted to show you how, more about how we know that the Department of Education is all in on making sure that this is promulgated, that the idea that there's a trans identity, that their gender identity is real, that gender ideology is real, that's promulgated in our schools. And this is also discussed at length in Logan's book. Here we have, and this goes back to 2021, by the way, the U.S. Department of Education supporting transgender youth in school. There's a whole document. It goes on for multiple pages. There are resources for students to file complaints against their schools and against other students. They're talking about, transgender students. And again, these students are self-identified. How many times are people likely to make a mistake that runs them afoul of these rules, whatever? Not only that, we now know that because of this ideology, there's a move to get the kids to understand it like it's true. It's all true and real and not, an opinion. And they want to change the way the children see gender. And here it is. Again, note the blue and the pink. Adopting policies or model plans to guide school staff on how to support students and communicate with families. This is top down from the federal government level telling schools that they need to do these things, whether it's, whether the people of that state, that district, whatever want it or not. That's a little thing I like to call unconstitutional. That's in a way kind of dictating curriculum, because model plans to guide school staff on how to support students, you can mealy mouth it all day long. It's basically tell your schools and your teachers that they need to go along with this. And then, of course, now they want to back it up with a change to Title IX, which would codify it and make it, there's a severe consequence if you don't do it. Somebody could literally call it discrimination if you don't do this. If you don't support transgender youth in school, according to the Federal Department of Education. So that's, in my opinion, a little bit of a problem. Oh, I already did this. Okay, so here's the fact sheet and we had the final rule. The next thing I wanted to show you was that resources. Here we go. Why isn't this showing? Okay. U.S. Department of Education. And if you guys don't ever go over there and see what's going on over there, I encourage you to do so. This is not rocket science. I'm not doing anything that you couldn't do. Okay. Like showing you what Colin did. Also, I didn't build that. I didn't do that. I'm just like, oh, Deb spent a lot of time on the internet today and found some people smarter than she is who've been doing some really interesting work. And I just want to make sure you guys saw it in case you missed it. That's literally, and I put my color commentary on there, but I'm not really doing anything special here. Right. This is self-evident. And you can go over here and look at this yourself. They have the Office of Civil Rights resources for LGBTQIA students. Well, the fact that a federal agency is using this big, long, clustering of letters that we didn't use 4 or 5 years ago in the context of the law or in the context of a federal regulatory agency that sends money, taxpayer money out to our schools, when they do things like this, it makes it real. It makes it real in a way that if you disagree and you say, I don't think this is a thing, meaning I don't think kids all the way down to kindergarten can be this. And they're not limiting it. They're not saying in high school, they're not saying post-pubescent, sexually mature students. They're not saying that. They're saying students. That could be all the way down to kindergarten. And if we end up with universal preschool as well. They're not making a distinction by age. The mission of the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights is to ensure equal access to education and to promote educational excellence through vigorous enforcement of civil rights in our nation's schools. Bullying, harassment, and exclusion from school activities and other forms of discrimination can interfere with LGBTQIA+ students' access to a safe and inclusive school environment. Well, isn't that an interesting term? What is that? What is a safe and inclusive school environment? And why do the students who are not LGBTQIA also deserve that? And do those things go hand in hand? And my girl children, my female children feel like they're in a safe environment. Forget the inclusive crap. Just safe. You can't force inclusiveness. The school, by definition, by law, by constitutional authority, now that they've decided that we have to have compulsory education, it has to be inclusive. Everybody is compelled to be there. They have to have equal access, or you are violating the law. But telling the boys they can go in the girls' bathroom goes beyond inclusion. That's now a privilege. That's now a privilege. And you know how I know that? Because a male with a penis who does not profess to be trans can't just walk his happy ass into the girls' room. He can't just do that. But if he says, I'm a girl, then he can. That's it. That's literally it. You may look at me and say I'm male, but I'm really not. I'm a girl. Okay, go on in. That's how absurd it is. So what's discrimination after a while? And people say, no, that doesn't happen. But we know that it does. But we know that it does. We know that it has happened. We, in fact, know that there have been boys who've tested it out just to prove the point. And it has happened. So there's this whole thing. And what was fascinating to me is as I scrolled down, I started seeing a lot of red. Dear Educator Leather, they had all these Dear Educator confronting, and then they have these fact sheets, and then it says, pursuant to a federal court order, the department has been preliminarily enjoined and restrained from implementing this document against, and then they list all the states, and they have to keep adding states. Pursuant to a federal court order, the department, don't you find it strange that federal courts are enjoining the federal Department of Education against enforcing certain provisions in certain states? God bless the US Constitution. But don't you find that strange? Don't you think that maybe that has something just a little bit to do with all the freaking out on the part of Democrats? But we need to stack the court. We need to have investigations of these justices. And that's of the Supreme Court, not the federal courts. But they don't get the result they want. They get all pissy. Nobody steps back and says, maybe we're the ones violating rights. I mean, just maybe. I mean, is it a little weird to you guys that the Office of Civil Rights has been enjoined by federal courts against enforcing certain rules that allegedly protect civil rights? That one gave me a brain cramp. I'm sorry. But yeah, I find that very strange. So I thought I'd show that to you. That's how hard they're trying. That's how hard they're working to put it in the schools. Okay? So there's that. Then I went over and I I went to the Department of Education and I did a little search on gender identity, and I come up with all kinds of things, right? You get all kinds of searching stuff. Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights launches comprehensive resources, review of the regulations. They've been at this for the entirety of the Biden-Harris administration. They have been trying to push this into the schools. This isn't just a continuation of stuff that was going on when Trump was in office, or even when Obama was in office. This wasn't there. There's been a concerted effort to put this in. Theo Jordan posted, this was posted by our Department of Education, a federal government that has still not even publicly acknowledged the CAS review or horrors revealed within WPATH, all the while pushing this ideology as science and medicine. You can't be serious. So here we have U.S. Department of Education. Mix Eddie Donato, an elementary school library paraprofessional, reminds us that students do best when they can see themselves in their schools, their educators, their leaders, and their library books. Says who? Don't accept this as a fact. This person who is confused to the nth degree is reminding us how students do best. You'll excuse me if I don't find him, her, they to be a credible source of information about how my children would do best. And I don't know about you guys, but this was never an issue for me. I didn't look around my classroom, my school, whatever. And I don't think I'm alone. I really don't. I don't think I'm some unique unicorn who said, gosh, I can't do well at school until I find somebody who mirrors me and I can look at and go, that's me. That person's just like me. That person seems to feel exactly the way I feel. First of all, I remember my childhood pretty well, and I don't remember. I mean, like when I was young, I wasn't like, I am this person today, or I feel like this. Most I knew was I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin because guess what? I was a kid. None of us did. You just trudge on through. But this idea that you got to like find somebody else who like represents the level of discomfort that you feel or you won't feel comfortable, or somebody who's like dressing a part that you somehow identify with and now you can learn, that's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. How many people have learned from people who bear no resemblance to them? Some of my best teachers were old enough to be my grandparents and had, look kind of old and crusty, and they talked a little funny and they had some strange moods. They are very like crotchety old people, whatever. But I loved them and I learned very well from them. And yeah, I didn't see myself in them for sure. Definitely did not. Big generation gap. It's ridiculous. One of my favorite teachers was a veteran of World War II who had lost the use of an entire side of his body. It was like limping through the hallways, like almost, lurching through the hallways. Nice guy, big smile, but I couldn't begin to relate to his experiences. But he was a great teacher. When he was teaching the subject, I learned from him. So when people tell you this, like they need to see themselves in the school, don't buy it, because there's no evidence that that is even a thing. So then the other good news is, as I told you about the Title IX pushback, we have Heritage Foundation, Moms for Liberty, Tiffany Justice, and several other people went to DC and they spoke. They have been actively involved in the lawsuits, pushing back on this in various states. Guys, people are fighting. They are fighting these new Title IX rules, and that is what we need to do. Even Professor Allen last week said we have to say no. When the government comes in and says, accept this woo that we're pushing, we have to stand firm no matter what names they're going to call us and say no. The answer is no. You don't get to manipulate our children into believing a set of beliefs that we don't agree with, that effectively amount to a religious cult. Now, if you want to go open a private school and send your kids there with your own money, no tax dollars involved, no vouchers, no ESAs, just your own money out of your own pocket, if you're going to go do that. Now, personally, I think that's child abuse. I do. I think manipulating your children into being super duper confused and believing things are true that are not true is abuse. And somebody will say, well, what about if it's like a Christian school or this school or that school? Yeah, there might be an argument to be made for that too. But Christianity is not, in and of itself, mainstream Christianity is not a cult. And I could make even as an atheist myself, I could make that case and I could show you how they're different if I had the time. I don't tonight. Because you get to walk away and say, you can go to Christian school and be like, I don't believe this, but teach me math. And that's fine. You won't be shamed. You're not going to be, told you're a bigot. You're not going to, your mom and your dad aren't going to be called and you're not going to be like sent home. If you do something aggressively rude, maybe, but if you just kind of don't buy it, they might try a little harder to persuade you or whatever, but that's okay. There are Jewish kids who go to Christian school because they get a better education. So that's not a cult. That's just a worldview. That's a way of, we want to teach things in this way, but you don't have to accept it. If you have to use neo-pronouns or you're going to get punished, if you have to accept unreality as reality, like it's in the here and now, it sounds like going to school and saying, there are angels in the room with us right now. And if you don't see them and agree that you see them, then we have a problem. You're going to get disciplined. You're bullying. That's more like what it is. Look at your classmate and acknowledge that they are something they're not. Okay? So that's the difference. But they're fighting and they're saying no, and I am grateful. Um, Unfortunately, in addition to our Department of Education, the ACLU is also pushing the Title IX changes. They support them, which tells you how useful they are anymore as a civil liberties organization. Not very. Um, we also have Parents Defending Ed, Nikki Neely. I think that's how I pronounce her name. Don't honor the anniversary of Title IX when you're actively trying to destroy it by forcing males into female locker rooms, trampling over the First Amendment, and ending due process rights for students. And she's going after Miguel Cardona because he was big on celebrating it. And of course, while they're busy trying to change it. Then I found this. This is from Natalia Murakaver. Get everybody's names wrong. I'm sorry. This is something I think you guys should all have. It's a gender toolkit. It's really pretty fantastic. I'm going to copy the link and throw it into the chat for you. And then I'm going to get to your comments, by the way. I'm not totally ignoring you. I just want to get through this as quickly as possible. All right. What to know about children and gender policy. So this is the toolkit. Let me switch to it. Here we go. What to know. And it says, we believe that all children are deserving of safe learning environments and that gender nonconformity, which is completely natural and found across cultures, must be respected. However, remember, gender nonconformity is different than gender theory. I didn't conform to gender stereotypes. Remember? I wore boys' clothes, played on boys' teams. I liked hanging out with the boys, very boyish. I was a tomboy. So that's gender nonconformity. Then it says, however, the manner in which topics such as gender identity are practiced in schools can come into conflict with parental rights. The information in this toolkit is intended to rise above culture war noise and give you the information to feel confident making evidence-based decisions in parenting and public policy. And this is like my favorite part of the whole thing. It explains the school to clinic pipeline. This may be one of the key reasons that this ideology is being pushed on our kids. There is a pipeline. This also is one of the justifications for having that clinic right in the school. So you probably know that my friend Kelly has talked a lot about the community school model and how that is coming, where they want everything to be all together, the medical facility, et cetera, where the people doing the counseling and even administering, treatment and so on to your kids will be as protected by qualified immunity as all the school officials. And they won't be held to the same ethical standards either. And you will not have the same rights to be notified that you might have for private doctor or whatever. In fact, in California, it's now law. They can't notify you if your child wants to use different pronouns. If your child says, I'm gay, they can't tell the parents. So social transition is an intervention that has profound bearings on a child's mental, emotional, and physical development. School social transition, the conflict with parental rights. This is not a political left-right issue. No, it's not. So this is fantastic. And this is a product of Restore Childhood, a nonprofit founded to protect children from government overreach in health and education. I strongly recommend that you download it, share it with other parents. There's printables in here. You make sure you know what's going on with that. So that's super important. Then what else did I find that I wanted to share with you? Hold on. I feel like there was something else. This was good news too. This was breaking just today. The Supreme Court. Let me share this tab. The Supreme Court is to review the Tennessee ban of puberty blockers and transgender surgery for minors. Now, there are some people who are worried that it won't come out the way we would like, where we would like them to uphold the ban. But obviously this has been brought up to the Supreme Court because there are some people saying, like, how dare the state get between doctors and their patients or prevent parents from exercising their parental rights to choose these surgeries for their children. And so it remains to be seen what the Supreme Court will do. I am concerned. I don't think it's a shoo-in. I really don't. I'll be curious to hear the arguments, but you should know that this is happening because Tennessee has banned puberty blockers and transgender surgery for minor children. I hope, dare I say, I pray, because I just told you I'm an atheist and I'm still praying that they will conclude that these are permanent. They are not supported by evidence. In other words, it's not evidence-backed treatment. In fact, I hope they bring up the Cass report, WPATH files, and all this, that this is not evidence-based medicine. And we're talking about minors. We are talking about permanent changes that the child cannot consent to. They cannot give informed consent. It's just not possible. And furthermore, even if the parents could, even if you said, well, they can't give informed consent for chemotherapy either, and yet their parents get to decide on chemotherapy. Well, that's life-saving, one could argue. It's supported by evidence. I know some of you will disagree, very, against chemo, but I'm just saying there's more evidence in support of that being a life-saving treatment than this. And the other thing is that chemotherapy to save their life from cancer is not going to well, it might sterilize them. That is possible depending on what kind of cancer they have, but that's not like definitely going to happen. And it's not it's not permanent, like surgical alteration or chemical castration. It's just it's a terrible side effect of the drug. But we do have a lot of documented evidence about what the side effects of chemo are. We are still completely in the dark about what awaits a lot of these kids in their older age. We don't know yet what somebody who's been put on puberty blockers at the age of 8 is facing when they're my age, 58. In terms of bone loss, cognitive deficit, heart disease, tumors. WPATH files give some indication, number of people who develop tumors in their 20s. But I think the risks outweigh any perceived benefit. And we're talking also about something only banned till they're 18. We're talking about something they can turn around when they're 18 and go do on their own. So I'm very hopeful that the lawyers in front of the Supreme Court will make that case and say, we're talking about protecting minors from adults and the permanent changes to their body that they did not give informed consent to have. So that's happening, to catch you up. And I found this, Lisa Davis wrote this article, How the Media Got the Trans Kids Story So Wrong. This is in April and May. The Poynter Institute for Media Studies offered a 2-part workshop for journalists, Transgender Coverage, Avoid Rhetoric to Deliver Meaningful Journalism. Was hosted by a white-haired Poynter faculty member of gentlemanly manner and featured a clinician, a lawyer, and a variety of gender creative journalists. The aim of these webinars was to remove ourselves from the politics of outrage to explore the facts. Unfortunately, they outrageously flouted the facts, and they're not the only venerable journalism program to train reporters to misunderstand this complex issue and explore only one side of it. From the AP to the National Press Club, journalism institutions have ceded to advocacy groups and activists in the process abandoning journalistic principles they claim to champion. So why am I showing you this article? Because I want you to understand that when you go to look for news about gender ideology and you get somebody saying, no, that, here's an article, that's not, conservatives say this is happening in schools, but they're hyperventilating over nothing. And this is only this, that, the other. Remember, the journalists themselves have been given slanted information by interest groups. They're not investigating this topic. They're being trained. They're going to webinars. They're going to conferences. They're having people who are self-interested telling them, no, this is what you need to report. So there you are, concerned citizen, parent, etc. And you're saying, I don't think this should be in the schools. You're exaggerating. That's not happening. Or it's happening, but it's good. They're not giving you the straight story, and they're not even looking for it. But this was, and then last thing I want to get to is this brave surgeon. This is Ethan Haim. He revealed in this Free Press article how his hospital was secretly transitioning gender distressed children. He revealed that he was a whistleblower, and rather than being protected by whistleblower protections, he's facing federal charges. Think about that. This guy just told the truth, and the feds showed up at his door. Okay. He's 34. He's at the beginning of his career. He and his wife are expecting their first child, and now he's facing a 4-count federal felony indictment for blowing the whistle on Texas Children's Hospital where he worked while a resident. At TCH, he discovered the hospital was secretly continuing gender transition treatments on minors, including hormonal intervention on patients as young as 11, after publicly declaring in March of 2022 it would no longer provide such services. The hospital unwillingly backed away from the treatments under pressure from Texas governor and attorney general, but Haim found not only were the treatments continuing, and why am I telling you this? What does this have to do with them pushing gender ideology in school? Well, again, as we saw with that guide, there is a school to clinic pipeline. And then what happens is people like Moms for Liberty or the governor or so, different people come in and say, no, you're not doing this. Oh, okay, we won't do it. We're not doing it anymore. No, we're not doing it anymore. Or they'll just straight up lie and say, wait, what? We're not doing that. Who told you we're doing that? We're not doing that. Oh, good. Okay, we're glad to hear you're not doing it. And then they secretly continue doing it anyway. Because why? Because the schools are still teaching the gender woo, and counselors in the school are still going, your child is trans. Let me change your mind, mom and dad. Or better yet, let me just not tell you this is happening. And we're going to get the kid all worked up into this frenzy of needing these surgeries or wanting these surgeries, or they're going to unalive themselves if they don't get the surgery. And suddenly you find yourself in the hospital giving your consent, or maybe you're just bought into it and going, yes, you're Jazz Jennings' mom. This is great. Let's do this. This is now the super coolest thing ever. Maybe you have Munchausen's by proxy. Regardless, there's no guardrail here. Department of Education, school, clinic, hospital, the politicians and the law is supposed to be somewhere in there saying, whoa, what are you doing? Stop it. Vulnerable children, vulnerable minors. And secretly, this is continuing. And then when somebody blows the whistles and secretly continuing, how dare you, we're going to arrest you. So not only were they continuing, the program appeared to be expanding. He recorded several online presentations by medical staff encouraging the transition of children. One social worker described how she deliberately did not make note of such treatment in the medical charts of patients to avoid leaving a paper trail. Can you even imagine? What if something went wrong? What if something went wrong? What if something happened to the patient? They had a terrible side effect, allergic reaction, died. What are they going to do? We have to avoid a paper trail. That violates laws. Haim told me they were talking publicly about how they were concealing what they were doing. You can't take care of your patient without trust. For me as a doctor, to not do something about this was unconscionable. He's right. Haim, like a growing number of medical professionals around the world, had grave doubts about the safety and efficacy of the explosive growing business of youth gender transition medicine. When he looked into it, he found that children distressed about their biological sex often had multiple mental health challenges, conditions that were being ignored in the rush to put them on hormones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So, and this is particularly significant because Texas legislator voted to ban the medical transition of minors May 16th, 2023. It was like the day after he gave Chris Rufo evidence that this was going on. And then he gets indicted. He was indicted last week, but as of this writing, he and his attorneys do not yet know the precise nature of the charges. One of his lawyers, Mark Lytle, told me it's very unusual to bring felony charges for an alleged HIPAA violation unless there's significant underlying crime, such as a hospital clerk selling a celebrity's medical records. So they have to find evidence of him releasing, specific patient information, identities, and so on. That would be a HIPAA violation. Just the fact that children were being treated, I don't see how that's a violation when it's in the it's in the public interest because they're in violation of the law. So there's that. So very brave doctor, and we should all be grateful that he stood up. And I think that's like the majority of what I wanted to tell you. So to summarize, we're pushing back on Biden's Title IX changes. Doesn't mean we're out of the woods yet. The fight is ongoing. Obviously, if he gets reelected, uh, unless these lawsuits and these court challenges hold, he may well still be able to implement his changes, which has implications. But even if the Title IX effort fails, as I've showed you, it is the official position of the Department of Education that gender ideology is real and that schools need to create these welcoming, safe, blah, 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 blah environments, and that students can still file civil rights complaints, Title IX aside. They can still file civil rights complaints if they feel like they've been discriminated against, blah, 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 on the basis of their gender identity. That's irrespective of Title IX, because that was in place in 2021. So it's great that we're pushing back on the Title IX changes, but all that bathroom stuff happened before. It's the sports thing. That's why it's astounding to me. Like, well, it doesn't have anything to do with sports. I'm like, then why are you doing it? Because since 2021, you've had policies in place to take money away from states and districts where they aren't providing this welcoming environment and all this kind of stuff. All right. So now I want to take a look at some of your comments and see where you guys are at with all this stuff. Thank you so much for commenting. All right. So, all right. I got to come over here. Sorry. All righty. Lots of stuff. Okay. Hi, Ego Brain. Hi, Crystal, two of my community members. Cody goes, as a trans guy, I can tell you gender ideology is not part of what we are. Gender identity is not our friend. Yes. And that's part of why I tried to give that explanation at the start, is that people are starting to conflate these two things and they are not necessarily the same. Trader Bear says, good to hear, Cody. I'm a gay man who is saying similar LGB are not aligned with gender ideology and queer theory. Absolutely, Trader Bear. And it's one of the things that frustrates me to no end, is the fact that all of this is impacting the LGBT community, for lack of a better term, but LGBT individuals pretty dramatically. And, that was actually one last thing I did want to show you. I'll come back to the comments, but there was a really important post today. It made me very sad, actually, but it was a whole thread shared by a gay man who was trying to explain why it is so very important that parents know that their children are gay, if they're gay, their children are identifying as gay, why it is important for them not to be kept in the dark. And his explanation was that, especially, he said it was especially for gay men, more so than lesbians. But let me share this. Here we go. Okay. And this is information, by the way, I didn't know. This is something I learned today. So he has this piece here. Yes, parents should know their child is gay. And what he did was he explained all the things that happened to him as a youth, and the culture that he was sort of pulled into when he came out, that has a lot of prostitution, abuse, and risk for disease. And in fact, in his longer thread that he wrote, he detailed it out. He detailed out about, you know, the people he'd been with, and they knew that he was young. Like when he was 14, there were men he was with and they knew he was 14. And, you know, it's a whole culture. It starts to be treated as like a rite of passage. And he said, it's not self-policing. And of course, it's sad that he has to come back afterwards and do the whole not all. And, you know, this doesn't mean it's okay to be homophobic now. That's not what he's saying. What he was just saying is that when parents are kept in the dark, in particular by counselors, teachers, people who could help the family, if there is a problem. In other words, if the kid is not aware already that the parents are going to be like, we love you and that's fine, and thank you for trusting in us enough to tell us, and what do you need, is there anything we can do to help you, are you okay? If the kid has any doubt in their relationship with their parents, that that's going to be the reaction if they come out to their parents, then to me it seems incumbent upon the other adults that the child might go to confide in, especially if they're a counselor or somebody at the school, to bring the parents into that fold, to bring them into that and help everybody, help the family unit deal with that. The last thing that needs to happen is secret keeping, because that kid needs to be who that kid is. And they're going to go find people who can help them figure it out, who can help them, adjust, who can help, somebody to talk to and lean on if they're still confused or they're fearful or who knows what they're feeling. And ideally, that would be somebody in their family who loves them, because they could fall into the hands of people who don't love them and want to exploit them. And I think it's very dangerous to start acting like the confidant of the kid away from the parents. But that's what's happening. And that is happening to gay children. That's happening to the LGBT kids. In part, I think, because they're being lumped in LGBTQIA, and it's the whole, we don't want to tell the parents about the T thing if they aren't going to be all on board with the pronouns and the hormones and all things. So we're also not going to tell them anything else. We're just going to make it a habit to keep secrets from parents. No, not good. All right. Cody says the nuance is appreciated. Thank you. It's easy to lump everything together. Yes. I try not to. I try to keep things separate. Transitioning little boys is trying to wipe out gay men. 100%. I see this as plain as day. If you haven't watched my shows with Dennis Kavanaugh, we talked about that in, I think, at least 2 different shows, about how it's really a form of homophobia, in my opinion, the trying to transition, telling these boys they're really girls. What is that? History will look back at this and say it was child abuse. Could it be tomorrow? Could the history be tomorrow? Eagle Brain says, Trade Bear, it sure will. I really hope so. Ethan Harris says, yes, LGBT groups are pushing back. Yep, there's gays against groomers, but they take a lot of heat and they're getting a lot of abuse. And to me, that is further evidence that this is messed up and not real, because if you have so much faith in the evidence that you've uncovered and the research that you've done, why does anyone need to be hostile and bullying and threatening? Why does that need to happen? Right? Eaglebrain says they say preferences are transphobic. Yeah. If a gay man says, I'm not interested in sleeping with, a trans man, I guess it was like a female male, and a lesbian doesn't want to sleep with an M2F, or I guess I get all the terms wrong, then that preference is bigotry. So it used to be like, I was born this way. I can't help. This is what I'm attracted to. This is how it is. It's like, you're not going to convert me back to being heterosexual. Suddenly it's like, no, you must convert to being heterosexual if the person who wants to date you is trans. Blah, 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 blah. Like it almost makes you wonder if the whole thing is almost a contrivance to make conversion therapy fashionable again and to harm gay children, to actually like kind of eliminate them and kids on the spectrum too. Um, let's see. Cody says it used to be a party foul when you outed someone who you thought was LGBT. It used to be they'll come out when they're ready. So why are we pushing kids to identify? I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I've wondered about this. I've wondered about this for a long time where I mean, I had a friend in college and we kind of sort of knew he was gay, but we didn't ask about it. We didn't, it was like the kind of it was just impolite. You know what I mean? It was just you took people as they were and it was kind of like maybe privately a couple of us would be like, "Do you think Rich is gay?" I kind of think so, but it's not our business. It was basically like what, it's not our business. So we had to play little games about like, come on, aren't you gay? I mean, and there certainly wasn't anybody else around us or at the school or whatever going, all the gay people come out now. Come on out. Be all proud of it. Like, come on, you should be out. And if you're not out, like something's bad. It just wasn't like that. There were people who were out. It was like, okay, they're out. And then there were people we thought were, maybe it was that they weren't ready, whatever. But this is how it used to be. It used to be your private business, your sexuality. If you weren't completely comfortable with it one way or the other. Even plenty of people who were straight, heterosexual, sorry, were maybe not dating anybody, not really, like maybe they were asexual, who knows? But it's nobody really talked about other people's sexuality. It just wasn't a thing. And I've had people say to me, well, that's your privilege talking because most people are straight. And so, of course, you didn't have to talk about it. I'm like, no, I knew plenty of people in both high school and college who weren't dating anybody, who clearly weren't fooling around, but there were plenty who were. There are also plenty who weren't. And unless there was something they were doing to cause speculation, there are people who are flamboyant or people who were like trying to draw attention to themselves, but not really declaring one way or the other. We didn't even really speculate. It was like, it just wasn't anybody's business. And now everything is everybody's business all the time. And if you don't share everything about yourself at a very young age, it's almost like you're withholding what's wrong with you. Why aren't you telling everybody who you are? More importantly, why aren't you deciding right now when you're 5? What are your pronouns? Imagine that. Imagine being in kindergarten. What are your pronouns? You don't even know what a noun is. Never mind a pronoun. And are you going to decide? Ego Brain says, same thing. It's an excellent point. Really, the only one they want to keep from us is, they don't want to talk to the parents. That point should be the reddest flag, trying to put a wedge between parents and kids. I've said this since the beginning. And every time it's like, but what if the parents are abusive? Okay. All the more reason you need the counselors and the therapists to be bringing the family into the conversation in an attempt to protect the child, an attempt to educate the parents about how to cope. And then it's on record, isn't it? Like they were in, we all talked, we all sat, I helped the child adjust. You want to keep the family unit together. That will protect the child more than keeping it a secret. Because then they're going home to an increasingly hostile environment. They're keeping a secret. Do you know how stressful that is? Even as an adult, think how hard it is to keep a secret from somebody you love. And these kids love their parents. It's this idea that because your parents might not be okay with you being gay, you don't love them anymore. That doesn't work like that. They just wish their parents would be okay with it. They say, I don't love my mom because my mom wouldn't be okay with me being gay. That's why it hurts. So with respect to that, you would think a responsible therapist would be like, you love your parents. We need to make this better for you. We need to figure out how to help you talk to your parents, how to help your parents listen. Then you're not triangulating, you're helping. But if you're kind of encouraging secret keeping. Now you're triangulating. You're being the trusted person. And that's a little thing we call grooming. That's not okay. Ray Kelly says they're turning the frog gay. I believe there's truth that statement by injections. I'm not sure about the frog. There's truth in that statement by injections. Okay. Maybe you can explain. Ego Brain says they say general. Oh, you already said that. Okay. Geneva says keywords influence young children. Yes, they do. Thank you for pointing that out. I get into so many arguments on Twitter about influence. I have people say, I don't think it's a big deal. Kids aren't really that, so what they read a book. So what they saw a movie. That doesn't really influence them. I'm like, then why are they going to school? What's the point of all of it? I mean, these things don't influence them, but try to put the 10 commandments in the school. Now, mind you, I'm not for that. I just want the flags out also. But suddenly it's, oh my God, we can't have that. That's indoctrination. I'm like, oh, so wait, you mean something being on the wall might influence the children? That's interesting. No, influence is a thing. Keywords repeated over and over and over again. Concepts presented as facts, ideas presented as facts when they're really opinions or theories. Absolutely influences children. They don't know any different. They don't have the ability to go, I don't know if that's correct. I mean, they go to school, you teach them things, they take your word for it. You probably could tell them over and over again that 2 + 2 = 5 and have them come out believing it. You probably could. You could teach them snow is black. Absolutely, you could. Why wouldn't you be able to? Just do it the right way, and enough times you could. Cody says, when left alone, most transsexuals report discovering they have something different about their relationship to their gender. It doesn't need to be influenced. That's what I've heard. So from the people I've known who I would say are trans, like in other words, where they're living life and they don't make, this has been how it's been, or even 25, 30 years ago, they transitioned or whatever. Nobody had to say a word. They weren't really, they didn't, live a life, get married, have kids, develop a porn addiction, and suddenly decide they're female. Enter the AGP, right? They didn't see a movie or go to a show or take a class or whatever and suddenly decide that they were trans. It just didn't happen that way. And the ideology behind a red marker that's actually blue is how someone who is not trans would describe gender dysphoria. It doesn't make sense. I've also heard that. And the thing that I've heard, and maybe Cody, you can help us out with this, is that gender dysphoria is similar to like body dysmorphia type of conditions, is a literal physical discomfort as much as it is psychological discomfort. Like that you're talking about a situation where if you haven't experienced it, you cannot possibly understand it or really explain it to somebody else because it's something you feel physically as well as psychologically or emotionally. It's not something you almost exclusively feel in your feels. You feel it physically, is what I've been told. And so I think that's fundamentally different. Just like those people who feel body dysmorphia, they'll tell you it's not just looking in the mirror that I feel fat or whatever. They physically feel like their body is way bigger than it is. I've had people who are anorexic describe it to me and say, no, it's very real. Like they can't really put it into words very well, but they'll tell you it's not just something they see in the mirror. They feel it. So I don't know if that's true or not. This is straight out of Mao's playbook, which led to the Cultural Revolution. Yeah. And then I think you guys are responding to the video scripts. Let's see. Catherine says, I remember the debates to make same-sex attraction legal. Every paper had a list of men arrested for cottaging. Yeah. And this is what I think the young man was describing today. That Oh, and I skipped ahead. Hang on. There were some other things. The daddying, I think, is one of the things that it's called too, where they take in young boys and they coach them and stuff. And I don't know. Let me go back. Somehow it jumped ahead, probably because someone made another comment. I apologize. Okay. Tony Baloney says they even show kids how to twerk. Yeah, they're sexualizing children. And you have to ask yourself, why? How many of you want to have a conversation about sex with somebody else's child? Not me. Let my hands down. I'm just saying, like, show of hands, probably no hands are going up. That is a very weird thing to want to do. And yet they're fighting to do it. They're like, it's wrong of Governor DeSantis to not let me talk about sex with other people's children. Really? Maybe we should check your hard drive. Then Cody says, ego brain, because you said there's no difference between males and females. I point out gender differences in learning, and you said we both have masculine and feminine, which I agree with. Oh, okay. Yeah, sex and gender, because up here, Cody says sex and gender used to be the same word, but being male and liking blue are not the same. Exactly. Well, I don't even think that's gender. Like, that's the whole thing, is like liking blue has nothing to do with gender or sex. It's liking blue. That's it. Okay. Then Sophia says, "Oh, a word. This stuff is not scholarship and in no way worthy of a PhD." I agree with you, but somebody's going to get awarded a PhD for it. Cody says, "But I don't agree that there isn't a difference between males and females." Yeah, there is one, but I don't think someone is born producing sperm or the capability of producing sperm, if that's the kind of gamete that their body is sort of structured to produce, can have a brain that's a girl brain. Like, I don't think there's no such thing as a girl brain and a boy brain, was my point. Catherine says drag queen story hour made the wolf the hero and grandma the villain. Red Riding Hood went off into the woods to live with the wolf. Wow. Is that one of the stories they told? That's super creepy. And, that brings up a point too, that all of this is also designed to break down boundaries between children and adults when it comes to sex, and to normalize strangers talking to our children about sex. That's very dangerous, as I hope everybody understands. Like, we really don't want our children to think this is perfectly appropriate for some random grown man to come up to our little girl and start talking about how pretty she is or whatever, or something. Or asking, what makes her feel good, or having any kind of conversations like that. It's just not in any way appropriate. All right. Let's see. What else have we got here? Ego Brain says, Cody goes, at no point did I say the difference is what I said. But yeah, the brain. I think we're all talking about the brain. There's a big difference with male and female. But as far as, we haven't been able to identify a brain that's a boy brain and a brain that's a girl brain, if that makes sense. Newspeak, suicide unaliving was. It's not Newspeak. It's, I don't want YouTube to take down my video. And what I've been told is, if I say that word, there can be problems. I could get strikes and things like that. So I don't know if that's true, but I'm not taking any chances. But it's not a word that I use except for that purpose. Sophia says we can do. Yes, so we're going to do the study on the evangelical thing. Cody says, ego brain, I said there's no gender in the brain. You can't scan a brain and look at the gender part and figure out the brain's real gender or something. Yeah, I think that we're all saying the same thing. I think we're all saying the same thing with that. Let's see. Catherine, science deniers never end well. I agree. I'm going to check on that hockey score for those of you, because I said I would try to finish. And why is this not showing up? Isn't it going on yet? Or is there just no score? today I'm not seeing it. I don't know. I'm not seeing it. If you guys can find the score, somebody tell us. But I went to look for live updates and it's not coming up. Okay. So Catherine says, get rid of saying gender. I managed 65 years without saying it. Everyone else understood me. I'm a little younger than you, but I've never said gender so many times as I have in the last like 4 years. It was sex. What's your sex? That was it. Or gender was interchangeable with sex, but I didn't say it, you know? Um, Ray Kelly says, don't join or quit the team. Let them play against each other. TRAs conflate sexual attraction with sex identity. Yes, they do all the time. Very frustrating. David Goodnow says football and swimming both require special facilities and equipment for that facility, but I suspect football pads cost a lot more than competitive swimwear. Is that supposed to be discrimination? And this, it's a very good point that you make when it comes to Title IX. For a long time, believe it or not, even as a female, I sort of opposed Title IX because I felt like it I felt the arbitrariness of it was going to cause problems down the line, uh, in terms of schools having to justify why they had a robust football program and they didn't have a lot of sports for women, um, when that had been their tradition, or that's they that's where they put their money and it raised a lot of money for the school and so on. And then now what they were going to have to do is they were going to have to siphon money from their competitive program in whatever sport that attracted students or actually brought in money for the school. And then we're going to have to sort of create teams just to be in compliance. And I heard that that was true for some schools. So some schools, in order to, because they were spending boku bucks on their football program, were coming up with like fencing and crew and like, okay, I'm not saying don't have these sports. I'm sure for the students who went there and got to be on the fencing team or the badminton team or the whatever new sport they put in there, or if they already had softball or something, just to have an equal expenditure and equal somebody not complaining that it was discriminatory. um that you know I was kind of concerned, are they going to just start making stuff up and then suddenly the tuition's going to go up for everybody because they have to have these sports and only a subset of people actually can participate in and so on. And I'm told that did happen. And then people came up with other workarounds like, oh, you want to go to this school but your grades aren't that awesome, you know what you should do in high school? Take up fencing. Because if you take up fencing, then you could be on there. They need to field their fencing team so they can be in compliance with Title IX and they'll let you in, even though your grades and your scores are not so awesome, because you can be on the fencing team. When I was coaching my essay students, I was hearing these arguments. So this is what these kind of laws do. They create these weird incentives that don't align with the organic reality of the situation of what people want and need. I'm sure competitive female athletes who want to play their sport so they can go on to be a professional or go to the Olympics or just get a scholarship, that probably for a long time swayed their choice of school and they went to schools that fielded those teams. But if it's now every school has to be in compliance with Title IX, there are probably plenty of football schools or baseball schools, or, maybe they only went co-ed in the 70s or something. And they're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We don't have female teams. So yeah, I do think that happened. Sarasvia says they changed the definition in the regulation, which the executive does not have the authority to do, if I recall correctly. Well, they're testing that theory. They say he has it. Others say he doesn't. So we'll see. Cody says, if you want more people to hear Deb's amazing arguments, hit the like button. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Catherine says, David Goodrow, I think it's good now, but women's professional swimmer is like specially designed second skin, extremely expensive. It take 15 minutes to jiggle into it. Yeah, it's more expensive than your typical Speedo. But I still think it's probably more expensive to field a football team. I think his general point is that in order to be in compliance, you have to look at your total expenditures. And if your athletic program is spending, like 80% on male sports and 20% on female sports, the federal government might have come down on you. And that became a problem for a lot of schools. Cody says, I'm a child. I'm a Mother, I'm a sinner. I'm a saint. I do not feel ashamed. I'm your hell. I'm your. Oh, that's funny. Okay. Catherine says, I'm too old for this gender BS. Sex matters. Delusional fantasies are irrelevant. Well, they're relevant for the people who have them. I just think that they need treatment. When you have a delusion, you need treatment. Even if it's not a delusion, if it's a dysphoria, you still need treatment. And by treatment, I mean you need to talk to somebody about the nature of your condition or your situation. And that should be a more involved, careful, thoughtful process. It's not just, sure, okay, I affirm that. That makes sense. There is no other mental illness or discomfort, if people are queasy about calling it mental illness, there is no other one that somebody self-diagnoses and the professionals, the doctors, the clinicians say, yep, whatever you say. That just doesn't exist. Can you imagine people say, I have bipolar disorder, give me the drugs? Personally, probably wouldn't do that because most people with bipolar disorder aren't too jazzed about taking their drugs, although they will take them because it helps a lot. But apparently the drugs are sort of unpleasant in their own right. But I'm just saying, people don't walk in. Even people, we are getting in the habit of handing out antidepressants like candy. And we now know they don't work. But imagine if somebody just walked in and said, hi, I'm here for some Prozac. Can you just give it to me? Yeah, and I while you're at it, I would like a prescription for some antipsychotics because I've decided that I've diagnosed myself with psychosis. Can you imagine? The doctor's just going, here you go. Yes, we affirm. Absolutely. Must be true. But somebody says, I'm in the wrong body. And yes, of course you are. Doesn't make sense. Cody says, a wild thing to keep in mind is that none of this has anything to do with trans people and usually hurts trans people, and it's all political ideology. Yep. Sort of the point I was trying to make at the outset, that there's gender ideology and the sort of trans activism. And then there are transsexuals. There are people, as I told you, who've decided, I have tried everything and I would be more comfortable in this life walking around looking this way and living this way. That is what is going to be my treatment of choice, because I've thought about it. I've discussed it with the experts. I've, done certain things to make sure this is really what I want. And that is what I'm going to do. Okay. An 8-year-old can't do that. So Sophia says, discrimination simply devolves into, you said something I don't like, or you didn't affirm. That's right. You won't go along with, as we talked about, it's like other people agreed. Other people treated them this way. They made them happy or they made them sad. So then discrimination becomes, you made me unhappy. How dare you? Cody says, it's like if they redefine the word gay to mean Antifa and they were like, we need to teach everyone to accept and celebrate gay kids. It's just crazy. They colonized trans. Yep. Tony Baloney, gender identity is not actually science. It's really just the worst game of Simon Says ever. Mm-hmm. Yep. Catherine says, the cast review means no one can use the excuse, I didn't know, when the child or vulnerable young adult is harmed. I agree. And the most outrageous thing to me about this Title IX thing and about the Department of Education sort of restating its commitment to gender ideology post-Cass is that they're just ignoring it. They're ignoring it. They're not modifying anything. They're not changing anything. They're still on the affirmation bandwagon. Cody says, I heard woke kids on TikTok say guys will call themselves girls and lesbians to make us look bad, but we know they're bad actors. They act like it's a rule for them and not for us, but it is. Yeah, I think it's fashionable now to be different. It's just absolutely fashionable to, say you're non-binary or some other thing, or have a bunch of neo pronouns. Transgender ideology is a quasi-religious belief that works as a cult. Yes, it is. Logan Lansing covered that very well. I highly recommend the book. Like I said, they can't say this man isn't actually trans because I looked at his Twitter and he liked a tweet by Ben Shapiro if it's law. That's true. That's part of the problem. They make these laws and you can't say these things. This is how it is in Canada. This is how it is overseas, in Europe, that your thoughts and your speech, and you're like, I disagree with you. I don't believe in this. And suddenly you've committed a crime. Catherine says it doesn't matter if they don't recognize the book. The book is thoroughly researched and validated. It wins. I agree. Oren says, I just want to be who I really am by rejecting your body, taking drugs, imposing speech on others, and getting surgeries. That sounds like you're in denial to me. Well, it does seem to contradict, doesn't it? Who I really am. Then why do you need all that stuff? Um, okay. I'm not sure what Camfordance is saying. What subject? Not sure. Many children trans won't sue as an adult because their brain didn't go through puberty and mature. I'm worried right now, Catherine, that a lot of them won't make it to adulthood. That's a big concern that I have. The younger and younger the kids, the more extreme the treatments, the more complete they're making their transition. And we're not talking about somebody just getting a haircut and changing their wardrobe. We're not even talking about just taking cross-sex hormones post-puberty. We're talking about puberty blockers. We're talking about people who could end up with cancer by the time they're 25, with osteoporosis by the time they're 19. I read one girl. So has osteoporosis. So, I mean, I'm worried they're going to have significantly shorter lives. And we know that cognitively, as you said, their brains don't develop fully. And then Catherine says, Oren, if men don't need to shave or change their body to be a woman, why mutilate trans boys? That's another interesting point. We have what some people call, the autogynephile. These are men. They look like men. They might go get top surgery, but I noticed they don't do the bottom surgery a lot of times. Most of the time, actually. And they really don't make much of an effort to, not look like a man in the face or anything like that. Quite aggressive. They'll dress like a woman. They look like a good old fashioned sort of transvestite, like a Rocky Horror Picture Show kind of thing. And there's something very aggressive about it. I think it's a fetish, this AGP thing. And they'll say, "But I'm really a woman." And then I have to ask myself the same question. Well, if that's all it takes to be a woman is putting on high heels and getting your hair, growing your hair and getting some implants and wearing a lot of makeup, then why do we need to do all this surgery and stuff? Now, obviously, that's an AGP. Then there are other people who are like end up looking almost like a woman. I mean, with surgeries and so on. But that's a full commitment. They don't need to do that as children, though. They can do that as adults. Catherine says, most girls I knew growing up were tomboys who played on bomb sites. Yeah, I knew a lot of tomboys too. Gender stereotypes didn't even exist when I was a kid. The craziest gender experience I had was when I said I wanted to get a shirt I found in the boys section in Goodwill, and my mom said, okay. I always bought the boy clothes. My dad didn't mind because they were cheaper. True story. Adrian says, I've said it before and I will again. It's always been the DEI chuckle buckets that have given me the most sexist treatment. Always, always, always. Ego Brain says, Cody, my sister went like 6 months where she wore boys clothes. My mom bought a few things for her she wore and she went back to her old clothes, which could be so easy. Yeah, when I became the most girly was after I had my daughter. Like right when I got married, I started getting kind of girly. And then I had my daughter and my eldest daughter brought out my inner girl. I think that girl was born pink. Like she was the most dainty little creature, little upturned nose. Even in utero, I saw a sonogram of her and she looked like a pixie. She looked so feminine. And the minute she was born, I just looked at her and I was like, you would never mistake this for a boy child. She looked so feminine. And she gravitated always toward the pinkest of the pink things. And I thought, this is karma. This is some kind of weird karma coming back at me because I hated pink so much. But I went with it. It's like, okay, you want her pink, wear pink. But that sort of brought it out in me too. I was like, this is kind of fun, putting little dresses on her and everything. She loved it. So I was like, okay, that's what you want to wear. I was allowed to wear what I wanted to wear and it didn't hurt me. Letting kids wear the clothes they want to wear um, to a point. I don't think it hurts anybody. I do think that having little boys wearing, like very obvious princess gowns and dresses and things in public is a little risky in the sense that I mean, if they're experimenting, they're toddlers and okay. But I think indulging it, going out and buying them lots of princess clothes or, really carrying it forward and it's not anymore the kid instigating it. It's like the parents going like, "Do you want another dress?" Then I think it becomes confusing. And I just wonder if it's the parents leading the way or the kid, if they're getting approval for it. Is it something they were just playing with, or do they feel like now they should do it? So I think we have to, and with girls, it's just, there just isn't really an equivalent. I guess the girl would be like, I want to wear my what construction worker outfit all day, every day, I suppose. But you're girl construction workers. They just aren't boy princesses. You know what I mean? There is kind of a dividing line there. Um, let's see. Catherine says, I've been through cancer treatment. The side effects are worse than the cancer, but you live to moan about it. Yeah, ideally. Let's see. In 2002 at a bar, I walked out of a man in a spandex dress doing his thing, bent over the sink. Wow. That's crazy. Ego Brain says, I'm in my late, or Cody says, Ego Brain, I'm in my late 20s. I grew up with all my emo guy friends wearing girls' skinny jeans, guy liner, and Hello Kitty. They were guys, though, clothes and colors that make you trans. David Bowie, amongst others. I mean, that's what I grew up with. We never looked at David Bowie and said, well, he's really a girl. Yeah. No, they all wore makeup. Elton John wore makeup. I mean, all kinds of men wore makeup. And sometimes, like fairly feminine looking clothing too. It didn't make them women. Why wasn't that enough? I don't understand. Then Cody says, I never thought about gender roles in 2015 when all the gender ideology stuff came out. Yeah, I didn't really either, except insofar as I was very frustrated that feminism in particular had, even for all my tomboyness and everything, all I wanted was to be a mom and have kids. Like that was my big dream. I wanted to be a mom. I wish I could have had, 6 kids. I wanted lots of kids. And where I grew up, that was just frowned upon. You go to college, you have a career, or you're some kind of gender traitor, right? And I'm sorry to say I took it on. I mean, I took it on in the sense that I kept it a deep, dark secret. People would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I didn't say mom. I don't know, something, who knows? I made stuff up here and there, but I never told the truth, never told anybody the truth. And I was actively hiding it because I knew if I told somebody I just want to be a wife and a mother, they'd be like, weirdo. Why? That's a stupid thing to want to be. Why would you want to waste your life? That's how it was. And I think that's terrible. I don't think we should do that to anybody. I think if a boy says, I want to grow up and get married and have kids and be a dad, nobody should make fun of him. And same for a woman. That should be like, that's awesome. You do that. Let's see. Texas She Plays at the beginning of government tyranny. Yeah, all of this is. Catherine says, Cody goes, I grew up with sex-based education. Boys learned general Scott, girls learned domestic science. We all learned both. So there were boys in my cooking and sewing class, and then I took shop also. And I loved it. I really wish they'd bring that stuff back. I really do. I don't understand why they got rid of it. That stuff is fantastic. Cody says, we're not doing that. Great. We're going to make it illegal. Whoa, let's not go crazy. If you're not doing it, why do you care if it's illegal? Exactly. Adrian says, lots of violations of medical oaths in that children's hospital. Yes. Tony Baloney, this is not only happening in the USA, it's happening all over the world. The same push from leaders with WEF ties. Yes, it is. But Europe is ahead of us, at least some of the countries, in banning this stuff for children. They're ahead of us. That's Unacceptable. They they're way behind us in the protection of every other civil liberty, right? And yet they know what a boy and a girl is. They know what a woman is. They don't know what free speech is, but they know what a woman is. We know what free speech is, but we're a little bit confused. We need a biology degree to figure out what a woman is. Um, Cody says, as a trans person, I'll say medical transition for people with dysphoria vastly improves quality of life, not necessarily life saving by definition, but puberty blockers are absolutely not life saving. Agreed. Agreed. There's too much damage to the human body. Your body needs to develop. Your body needs to go through puberty and so on. So now, and in this case, Catherine says that there's no such thing as a trans person. I realize that people disagree. I think sometimes uh the differences in the definition. So the problem is because of gender theory, we hear trans person and we think about all this stuff. When for decades there were people who we used to call transsexuals, people who had sex reassignment surgery, sex change operations, whatever you want to call it. And it was very uncommon, but it happened. And we just all seemed to go on about our business, right? So we didn't talk about them as trans people. We just talked about them as people, if that makes sense. And most of the time you didn't know. Most of the time you just didn't really know. So that may be why now hearing, trans person as an identifier sounds so strange to people in our generation, Cody, because we knew that people like this existed. We just didn't call them trans people. We didn't call them that. They were a man who had a sex change operation or a woman who had a sex change operation. It was usually a man. I would say 9 times out of 10, it was a man. But it's a new term, and I think because it has come in and been popularized at the same time as all of this gender woo, it's becoming a problem. And as Catherine points out, it's gay conversion. It's now so much. It's been so exaggerated and overgeneralized that it is a form of gay conversion therapy. Um, let's see. Yeah, Ego Brain says some parents are bad, so treat all parents like they're bad. That's what they do. But if you turn around and you say some teachers are bad, some teachers abuse their students, some teachers, I mean, literally abuse their students. Not all. How dare you say that about all teachers? It's like interesting because zero, there should be exactly zero teachers because they're background checked. There's laws, they're in a building, there's like all this. I'm not saying there should be any parents who abuse their children either. There just isn't the same degree of legal oversight. The government is not all up in our business 24 hours a day. I'm saying from a purely practical standpoint, there ought to be zero, and there are way more than zero. So my point there is the government is not exactly very good at preventing abuse of children. So to act like they should be the arbiters of which parents get to parent their own kids without any evidence that we shouldn't is ridiculous. They're not good at policing themselves. Ray says, back in my day, there was the AIDS scare. I knew and accepted a few people preferred the same side. Yeah, it was a very terrifying scare. Catherine says, I remember the debates to make same. Oh, right. So we looked at that already. So Tony meant turning the frogs gay is from the use of pesticide atrazine. It is turning male frogs into females. It's in all of our food. It's been found in our water supplies. I've wondered about that. Cody says, I would explain gender dysphoria like having shoes on the wrong feet. Blue, the marker, is saying I have blue shoes, but I really want pink shoes. That's why I said that it's been described to me as a physical feeling of just like literally being massively uncomfortable, not just up here. Let's see. Scrolling through. Lots of other stuff. Let's see. Tony Baloney says, I was watching The Exorcist and I came to the conclusion that possession is real because to possess means to own. These kids are possessed, owned. They're running the possessor's prescribed life. That's a really interesting way to look at it. I think you're right. When you are groomed from 5 to believe that your goal is to make other people happy or not make them sad, prevent them from being sad. You are at the mercy of other people. And the people you're at the mercy of are the ones who are not choosing to go along with the it's my obligation to please everybody, right? And the ones who are going, please me. You're at the mercy of the narcissists. You're at the mercy of the people who decide, I'm going to be in charge of this little situation. And they're owned by those people. Their emotions are owned because they are not in control of their own emotions. They're constantly looking for who has to be dealt with. They're walking on eggshells. And that is characteristic of children in abusive environments, by the way. A child who grows up in a household with everything from emotionally immature parents who can't control their emotions and they're all over the place, all the way to physically abusive parents, those kids are hyper vigilant. They are constantly like gauging. They learn how to read the room. They can read sort of almost like the tension in a room. They know the sound of different people's footsteps. They know when somebody's happy or sad, and they kind of like work really hard on picking up on it. And it consumes them to a level where they don't know where they end and the other person begins. Their entire sense of self is gone. It's empty and it is controlled. They're almost like a puppet of the other people in the house who are dominating that situation. And that is a kind of possession. Yourself can't develop. Cody says, I was talked to my friend who said her parents wouldn't let her wear Doc Martens because they were boy shoes. I told her that was ridiculous. Girls love dogs. And she said, oh, maybe I'm not non-binary. So she thought she was non-binary because she wanted to wear Doc Martens. I used to work in kitchens. I wore Doc Martens because they were comfortable kitchen shoes. Definitely not non-binary. That's crazy. I didn't see Catherine Robillard disagree, but I'm not a tyrant. You don't need to agree with the concept of trans people. Yeah, no. Okay. And Tony says, I believe having history class first period should be considered child abuse. I just think that having any first period that falls before 8 in the morning should be child abuse. Unless you're talking about kids under the age of 10. They get up early. But these high schools now, I think it's on purpose. I really do. I think that scheduling high school to start with the late bell at 7:15, as it is in my city, is abusive because teenagers' biorhythms are such that they are not fully awake till 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. That's been studied. It's just they just don't operate well before that hour. And yet they have high school here start because of busing schedule. And I think it's the same in a lot of urban areas, start so early. And they have all these excuses. Well, the buses, there are fewer buses for high school than for elementary. And we don't want to have the buses, the many buses for the elementary and middle schools on the road during rush hour. So they go later after rush hour, but the high school buses can go during rush hour because there's fewer of them. And then, the high school kids have sports after school and they have jobs after school. So they need to get out earlier. Da, 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 da. I went to prep school and my earliest class, I think was like 8:30. And I think it was 8:30, maybe 9. We still got out in time to have sports. Yeah, we just didn't waste a lot of time doing a lot of nonsense. And we didn't have 90-minute classes. What the hell? They have 90-minute classes now. Did you know that, guys, in high school? It's a wonder that high school kids learn anything. I swear, they were taking a teenager and they're saying, how can we structure school such that the chances of you being able to pay attention to anything at all are minimal? Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll start it at the ass crack of dawn, give you 20 minutes for lunch at 10 a.m., and make the classes 90 minutes long. Oh, and you might have, PE, but it's going to really be like sit in the gym on your phone while a group of kids who are really, goody two shoes play basketball or whatever. But the rest of you can sit on your phone. No exercise at all. That's high school in America today. Anyway. Wait, sorry. Catherine says I used to get up at the crack of noon. Exactly. Tony Bologna says my grandfather was tough. He told me he used to have to walk 6 miles to go to school every morning, and his school was across the street. Yes. Feels like 6 miles when it's early. Anyway, you guys, so that's kind of like the rundown of where we are with gender stuff. I did the show because I wanted to draw your attention to Colin Wright. If you're not following him already, please do. I know he's working on more stuff for Substack. Follow his Substack. As an evolutionary biologist, he knows the science and covers this very well. Also follow Lisa Davis. She has a Substack. I would encourage you to follow Kelly S on Twitter. She covers the community schools. Make sure that you're, staying on top of what's going on at the Department of Education and with the Title IX lawsuits, because the fight is ongoing. The Cass and WPATH aside, we're all like, yeah, this is going to end now, right? No, it's not. I wish I could tell you that we were close to the end, but we're not. We're making headway. We're making progress as far as protecting children. We're getting a lot more people to be awake. I would suggest you get Logan Lansing's book and read it. It's fantastic. Once you're done reading it, pass it off to someone else. Also get Pam Garfield Yeager's book. That's a book that's more of like a practical guide on how to deal. Like if your kid comes home and says, my friend just told me they're really a girl, if they're whatever. It's like, what can you do? How to talk to your child about these issues. Fantastic book, great resources. So that's, I'm going to keep you in the loop as I get more stuff about the gender, ideology in the schools. But the main point is, yes, it's intentional. Yes, it's from the top down. We're not done fighting it. Anybody who tells you it's not intentional is lying or ignorant, but mostly lying. All right, you guys, that's it. I kept you way longer than I intended to. I still don't know the score of the game for the hockey fans out there. But thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to support my work, there are numerous ways to do it down below in the show notes. I appreciate every bit of support because this is all just me, all alone doing this. So many people are like, who's funding you to spread all of this hate? And I'm like, me? Anyway, so thank you. And thank you for coming, Catherine. I think you're new here, so I appreciate you joining us. She says, I thoroughly enjoy this. Thank you. It's almost worth taking lectures home, which makes me engaged. 2:30 a.m. Oh my God, where are you? Holy cow. Thanks for coming, you guys. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.